So we definitely utilized that with the help of the SBDC. Again, they helped us with our business plans, which was so huge and just such a big part of that process, so that those are things that you can submit so that the city can actually see you have this great plan and you've really worked it out and you've really done your homework and things like that.
It was so nice to know that we had the resources down at the SBDC. James was so huge in helping us, and actually all of the counselors down there had, a part in helping us get through the process. You will come across wonderful people down at the SBDC. They are so kind and so eager to help. It's an invaluable relationship, it really is.
The SBDC is important to the economy and to the local community because it's a resource. I can tell you, when I first started, I was just looking for answers and for somebody with some experience to tell me that I was going to be either making the right decision or to avoid making a mistake. And I think that is really the biggest value that SBDC offers to entrepreneurs and business owners, because more often than not, business owners don't have business degrees. And entrepreneurs, some of them have never actually operated a business before. And so it's important for those types of people to be able to find this resource, find the answers they need, and avoid making these big, costly mistakes.
Most business owners know their trade, whatever it may be, whether they're restaurant owners or machinists like us or engine builders. They will help you with what you need to run the business successfully on the business side.
So I think that if you're going to be starting a business, come here first before you make any decisions. Come to the SBDC, learn something you don't know, walk away with a little bit of value at no cost, and then you can make decisions about what you want to do with your business.
Good morning, everyone. It is 8:30 a.m. on April the 20th, 2021, and we will officially call this meeting to order. We will start with our chaplain prayer and pledges, and I believe Gary, Marcella Jenkins are here to lead us in both of those. So if you would all please stand.
To the mayor, to all the council members and all who is in attendance, good morning and God bless you. Lord, as we come before your presence, we just thank you once again for another day that you have made. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. We invoke your presence here today as we begin the city council meeting. We ask you to guide and direct every decision, that it will be godly and in your divine will, Lord. We ask you, Lord, to protect San Angelo from all danger, harm, and help us, Lord, to do what you would have us to do. Humble us before you, and we were mindful to give you the praise, the glory, the honor, and the thanksgiving. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. This morning we have two proclamations, recognitions, and the first one will be for the Alcohol Awareness Month. Do we have folks in the audience who will be receiving it? If you'll please come forward. Approximately 15 million current drinkers in the United States are dependent on alcohol. Almost 100,000 people die each year from alcohol-related causes: drinking and driving crashes, other accidents, falls, fires, homicides, and suicide. Alcohol abuse is linked to as many as 2/3 of all sexual assaults and date rapes. The typical American will see 100,000 alcohol-related commercials before they turn 18. Adolescents use alcohol more than tobacco or illicit drugs, and young people begin drinking on average at 13 years of age. Youth who begin drinking before age 15 are 4 times more likely to develop alcohol dependence than those who begin drinking at age 21. Alcohol is a primary factor in the 4 leading causes of death for youth ages 10 to 21. For all these reasons, the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council for the Concho Valley and the Concho Valley Cares Coalition are asking the residents of San Angelo to join in recognizing April as Alcohol Awareness Month. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Alcohol Awareness Month in San Angelo, Texas, and call upon all residents, parents, governmental agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, hospitals, schools, and colleges in the city to support efforts that will increase community awareness and support for individuals and families coping with alcoholism in our community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of San Angelo to be affixed this 20th day of April 2021. Present this to you, and we'll go ahead and ask if you'd like to make some comment to please do so.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Flores with the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council. I have here with me the Prevention Director, Ray, and our CCP Coordinator, Taylor. We just want to thank the City Council members and our Mayor for allowing us to be here today to bring awareness to this issue. April is one of our busiest months, and we just want to remind the community to play a role in your part of making it a healthier and safer community. Talk with your family, talk with your friends, get them the help that they need, and refer them to us as needed. Thank you.
The first Earth Day was held on April 22, 1970, when San Francisco activist John McConnell and Wisconsin Senator Gaylord Nelson asked Americans to join in a grassroots demonstration supporting environmental challenges. At that time, President Richard Nixon led the nation in creating the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, 51 years later, more than 1 billion people in 192 countries participate in Earth Day activities each year, making it the largest civic observance in the world. Earth Day is an annual reminder of the constant need for a commitment to restoration and sustainability efforts. It is up to each and every one of us to restore our Earth because we care about the natural world. All people of this earth from all walks of life have a right to a healthy, sustainable environment. Not only is Earth Day meant to increase awareness of environmental issues, it is also a time for our community to come together at the local level to promote educational efforts, public policy, and organizations like Keep San Angelo Beautiful. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of San Angelo, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2021 as Restore Our Earth Day, and encourage all residents to use this day to celebrate the earth and commit to the stewardship of the environment. Together, we can make the earth a safer and healthier place to live. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of San Angelo to be affixed this 20th day of April, 2021.
Charlotte Anderson with Keep San Angelo Beautiful would like to thank Mayor Gunter and City Council, especially our president on our board, Councilman Harry Thomas. We have our team with us, our advisors, and our board. Again, we want to encourage everybody to get outside, to do a trash cleanup around your neighborhood, even just on your block. To look at your garden and work on beautification. It's the perfect time as we celebrate Earth Day on the 22nd. And would also like to recognize a very special person with us today, Miss Laurie Chavez. She was recently appointed to Keep Texas Beautiful Young Texan Ambassadors. And this is an inaugural program this year where they selected 43 students across the state of Texas. So hundreds of people applied for this appointment, and Laurie is one of 43 representing San Angelo. So we're very proud of her. She goes to school at TLCA, and she'll be working with us on events and programming, and we know she's going to highlight the best things of San Angelo. So thank you again, Council. Thank you to our advisors and our team, Mr. Thomas. We appreciate all your support. John Berryu. Again, Miss Sally Iana, Shannon, and Mr. Bob Salas. We appreciate all the support. And Teresa is also an advisor on our board. So we appreciate everything that everybody brings to our team that assures our continued success. Thank you. Did you get this?
All right, we will now move into the public comment section of the agenda. And public comment, issues or concerns not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, address all comments to the dais, begin by stating their name and address or single-member district number, and limit their remarks to less than 3 minutes. Do we have individuals here today who would like to come forward with some public comment? Please come forward.
Can I take the mask off?
Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Barline, 1415 West Harris, single member district number 5. I'm here to relay some information to you that some letters that I sent to Mr. Carter, our representative. This is involving Block 122 in Angelo Heights. And so, if I may, dear Mr. Carter, we are neighbors in Block 122 of Angelo Heights Addition. There's a problem with primary traffic coming through the alley of our residential neighborhood. We want it stopped. The traffic is coming from Joe's Ice House, the liquor store that is on the corner of Burgard and Madison Streets. The property size is 70 foot by 88 foot. This property abuts no alley. Addresses 1402 and 1418 Burgard adjoin the alley, and neither have buildings that need service vehicles to access the alley. The alley isn't a lane roadway and isn't what it's to be used for. Primary traffic, not secondary traffic, uses regularly established streets. This is cut through traffic that uses the alley for a shortcut, and it should be taken care of on street intersections. The Texas Transportation Code defines an alley, means a street that is A, not used primarily for through traffic, and B, provides access to rear entrances of buildings and lots along a street. The San Angelo Code of Ordinances. Alley, minor travel ways that are used primarily for vehicular service access to the back and side of properties otherwise abutting on a street. There is more than adequate access in the liquor store from Beauregard and Madison Streets. There isn't any impedance of right-of-way. The traffic has the same right-of-way everyone else has, named streets. The traffic doesn't have a legal right of ingress or egress to the alley. The heavy traffic on the volume in the alley today, day and night, with vehicles stopping and the occupants getting out. Some of them get out for a certain reason. Flashing headlights at night, high noise levels, loud music, throwing out trash, excessive speeding, and even verbal abuse. The trash includes all type of liquor and beer bottles, scratch-off gambling tickets, beer and liquor packaging, cigarette packaging, and butts, which code compliance makes us responsible for. If I may, the traffic affects our quality of life and affects the livability issues from our residential neighborhood. We're entitled to a feeling of well-being, security, safety, cleanliness, and peace of mind in our residential neighborhood. We do not have this. We feel our residential neighborhood is insecure and that we're exposed to traffic that exposes us to unnecessary worries and fears and have a negative impact on our neighborhood and how safe we feel. The traffic impacts our daily lives and needs to stop. There's some more to that, but it's signed by myself and 11 of my neighbors. I guess I'm past my 3 minutes. Can I indulge y'all for just a little bit longer, please?
Does council wish so?
Go ahead.
That letter was sent to Mr. Carter on the 12th of January. Along with this letter. I wrote this letter after the initial letter because I wanted to document the traffic. Dear Mr. Carter, please find enclosed in the envelope an SD card with 372 videos for verification of use of the traffic in Block 122. In 1 week's time, 372 vehicles of all sizes came down the alley. The videos were taken the week of I've got my contacts in, 1/6 to 1/12, which shows that on the 11th, a Sunday, when the liquor store is closed, there was only one video event to prove that the traffic is coming from the liquor store. This traffic is unacceptable and it has to stop. In addition, and this is very important, the city of San Angelo has advised the maintenance of the alleys is the responsibility of the adjoining property owners. In the recent past, there have been 2 times that the paving has been done on the alley that wasn't requested by the owners. Someone is taking care of our business, and we would like to know who made the paving request, the reason for the request, and who authorized the paving done. Would you know anything about this? I would like to request a meeting with you, so forth and so forth, my name and my phone number. Mr. Carter came by a month later, and I visited with him about it. I wrote a follow-up letter on the 3rd of March, the 17th, requesting a follow-up and have heard nothing.
Thank you very much.
The reason that the alley was paved twice is that there's so much traffic in there. Alleys are not built to the same standards as streets. There's so much traffic in there that it tore the alley up so bad that it actually stopped or almost stopped the traffic going down that alley. I said twice it's been paved. The first time, there was a crew out there, and I was wondering what was going on, and I went out and talked to them, and they said they were looking to see about paving the alley. I told them, I said, we don't want it paved. It's fine with us just like it is. They carried on, and I can understand why, and asked them for their supervisor's name. They gave me a name and a phone number. It was, I guess, a Hispanic gentleman. And I called him and asked him, I said, what's happening? Who is it that's paving this alley? Why? And I said, why is it being paved? And he said, well, how's the traffic going to get over to the liquor store? And I told him, I said, they can be just like everybody else. They can use the street. I asked him for his supervisor's name and phone number, and he hung up on me. And within 5 minutes, they were out there. There was a crew out there, 2 trucks, and some city employees, and they did paving on the alley. The second time, it was a more entailed thing. It was beat up enough that it started to restrict the traffic going over to the liquor store and cut down on it by a great deal. They came out and I asked them, I said, who did this? And they said, we don't know. But as I related to Mr. Carter, it was quite an entailed deal. There were about 2 or 3 trucks, 7 or 8 employees, and a supervisor. They had a truck with gravel, they had a truck with asphalt, they had the asphalt saw to cut out places in the alley, and the roller to go down the roller. It was quite a detailed work, and I don't know what it cost the city. None of the neighbors requested that this be done. This was something that was handled inside, requested by someone else. We didn't want it done.
Okay, we will follow up. At this point, I think we've given you enough time to make us understand what the issue is and to understand that we need to take a look at it. So,
and I hadn't heard anything, but I do want to thank y'all for what you do and thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming forward today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I met with Mr. Barline the week before the big freeze, and I think I tried to call Daniel during that disaster. So, Mr. Barline, we will follow up with you.
Thank you, Lane. Any further public comment today? All right, with no further public comment, oh, sorry, Lucy would like to offer something.
Yes, I just wanted to take a few minutes. I want to echo what Charlotte said. Laurie, thank you so much. We appreciate everything you do. We are so proud of you that you're going to be representing San Angelo, and you don't have any idea what a big impact you're making on younger kids like yourself. Thank you.
Anybody else today? All right, with that, we will move out of the public comment section and we will move into the consent agenda. I will ask each council member if there's anything they would like pulled off the consent agenda, and I'll start with Billy.
Nothing to pull, Mayor.
All right, Lane?
Nothing to pull.
Lucy?
Nothing, Mayor.
I'm going to pull item D. Harry? Tom? Okay, Tom? No. All right, with that, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item D?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion by Harry, a second by Lucy. Any public comment? With none, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda with the exception of item D, please say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes. Item D is consider awarding OP-01-21 landfill consulting services to Biggs and Matthews Environmental Incorporated and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Shane?
My glasses. Yes, ma'am. Question?
If you will just explain the need for this consulting service request.
Yes, ma'am. As we're coming into the latter stages of the life of our existing landfill permit, it's necessary that we start looking to either expand the existing permit and or move into the new lands that was purchased for the purpose of expanding the landfill. And we have about, 6, I think, on our annual annual permit or annual report that we have 6 years left on our existing site. And so as we look at expanding that, it takes anywhere from 2 to 4 years, even 5, to get those permits either expanded and or a new permit. So we're just starting the process right now to move that along and to start all the environmental and all the other issues that we need to start.
Tom, did you have some questions?
Yeah. So, Shane, what I'm curious about, I get what we're doing here, I'm going that, but as we have and we pay Republic to do these things, do they have a service they could provide? I mean, do they have assets that would save us money from spending our money, make them spend their money on something like this?
They do, but there's other concerns and other things that we want to look at within this as well too. They do have some of the resources that they could go out and look at the environmental and start doing some of those things as well too. But there's some other issues and other items that we want to look at from the city side as well too. So making sure that we're covering our best interests as well too within this process.
And I understand it. I just hopefully if we can. We pay them a fee to provide a service, and if some of that can be provided for us and save us some bucks, let's do that.
Yeah, and not necessarily what we're looking at here isn't necessarily part of anything that we currently pay them. So anything that they would do concerning this expansion and or whether we expand vertically or we expand horizontally, either one, those would be services that we would have to work through some contractual process as well too. So currently there's nothing within our current fee structure that would cover these costs for this service.
Answered my question. Thank you, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have a question for Shane or comment? Then Tom, would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second by Harry. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. That concludes the consent agenda, and we will move into our regular agenda. The first item on the regular agenda comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are accepted from the time limit above and must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. The first item is first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving an amendment to a Planned Development District PD 07-03 to allow an additional use of a water processing and delivery business and related accessory uses for property located at 2909 A&M Avenue. John, you're on.
Thank you. This item was tabled at the last meeting. Do they need to vote to remove it from the table, or?
We do need a motion to remove it from the table since it was formally tabled last time.
So moved.
Lane has made that motion. Do I have a second? Second. A second by Tommy. Any public comment on this item, removing it from being tabled? Please come forward.
Morning.
Good morning.
My name is Brooks Murphy. I'm the owner of the business trying to move into this facility. I haven't been able to make a few of these because I've got other businesses I have to tend to and I've been traveling. That being said, I spent 2 days last week with a group of attorneys in Midland going over some of the information that's been processed and presented to you guys. I got a couple of concerns that they wanted me to relay and kind of point out. First and foremost is I don't have 27 letters opposing. What I have a copy of is a manila notepad with signatures on it with not much data on there. We did random calls, my attorneys did, over the last 2 weeks to those names and numbers on there. The majority of those people had some very interesting things to say. Those signatures were not put on there by truth. And as time tells, and my attorneys allow me.
Yes. Could you pause just a minute and let them take a vote on getting it off the table so you can discuss it? I think what your comments are more related to the actual item and not the tabling of the item.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so there's a motion and a second, and obviously some public comment. So we'll take a vote. All in favor of moving it from being tabled, say aye.
Aye.
With a 7-0 vote, it is no longer tabled, and so, sir, if you will continue.
Okay, apologies for that. Anyway, the point being, a manila notepad is not the same as a return letter with statements from each individual on the pad, and there's been some concerns raised there and some slander. And that slanderous and liability towards me and my business and who I am was taken very seriously, especially when my attorneys heard it. I make my living based on who I am and being held accountable, which is why I'm standing in front of you today. I'm big on accountability, just like I would expect you guys to hold me accountable. The people that made those statements will be held accountable, and I felt like it was important to state that and to let you know that there is a very big difference, because it's now been put in writing by the city of San Angelo. It's entered into your minutes. It's on your website, and quite frankly, it's false. You do not have 27 letters. If you do, I'd like to be provided with a copy of those today. I see a big difference between that and somebody knocking on doors, telling stories, getting signatures. That's really the majority of what I had to add, other than I'm here to answer questions when you're ready.
Teresa, any comment concerning his comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. With that, go ahead, John James. You want to make the presentation?
Yes, thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. You saw this last time, so I'm going to be very brief on a recap, but just a couple of points. One that came up last time was everything you see in here shaded was the original case that we brought to you. As came out in the last meeting, this blue area was sold off to the church across the street, and therefore Mr. Gabriel did not have the right to apply for rezoning on that piece of the property. So we've basically revised the request or the application to only include the red area, which is the area he still currently owns. And so, number one, that reduces the area that you're being asked to modify the plan development. What that would effectively do is create two plan developments. One, the original one would stay valid on the blue part, and then on the red part, the amendment to allow the water processing would be what you're considering today. I'll get to the notification area in just a second.
May I ask why, if the original request for changing of the zone was inappropriate since a piece of the land had been sold off, so why wasn't it taken back to the Planning Commission at that point, since obviously they voted on something that was not real?
Well, that's a good question. I think since they were considering the water processing use, and none of the proposed use was on that piece of property that was sold off, then I think it's not unreasonable for you all to consider it and approve it. If you have concerns about that, you could always send it back through the process to the Planning Commission to reconsider with the new information. But that's, at this point, since it's already at your table, that's really up to you all to either make a decision or send it back to the Planning Commission. And so one of the things that reduced area affected was the number of properties and which properties are within the 200-foot notification area. And so it did reduce the area within the 200 feet. But the other thing it did was since the church property that they purchased is no longer part of the request, they become part of the notification area. And as you recall from last meeting, the church itself was opposed to this, and so that added this whole area to the notification zone. And with the church's notification, as well as the other opposition we received, now we are still at the over the 20% threshold, which would trigger a supermajority vote from the council. Again, I'm not going to go. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer any of the other points that we presented last time. But I think those were the main things: the reduction of the area, and then the still requiring the supermajority threshold.
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor for questions from council.
I think the only questions I have, and the reason that we the owner of the company to be here is to give a little bit more information about his business and intents on expansion. If we can just get a little bit of enlightenment on that.
Sir, if you'd like to come forward.
Wondering again. I'm not sure where you want me to start. I could kind of give you the general gist of the business plan. The building's a great location for us simply because it's in the center of the city. We are a commercial business, but not an industrial business. Our equipment operates at less than 85 dB. I'm not sure if you're familiar with decibels or sound levels. I would venture to say right now I'm talking at about 85 dB with the echo in here and the sound. A Harley Davidson runs at an average of 165 dB. Your average diesel truck runs at about 125 dB. I don't have any piece of equipment except for a 1-ton truck that operates louder than my processing equipment. So to answer your noise level, which I'm sure is going to be one of the questions, volume will never be an issue. If I felt like it was, I wouldn't be requested to move into that building. Personally, and my partner, our number one goal is to sleep good at night and feel like we're providing something that's needed and wanted. And I'm having a hard time feeling like we're even wanted. Sometimes there's miscommunication, and I'm sure that's what a lot of this is, and that's probably where some of the comments in this manila notepad with these rumors came from, was miscommunication and misunderstanding. As far as expansion, the building's bigger than what we ever would use. We're not interested in being a billion-dollar company. Our equipment is designed to do 100 to 120,000 people, residential areas, cities. It's designed to function as a city. Our sales plan and marketing strategy is to cater to things inside the city limit and around the edges of the city limit. And to expand, we would need to buy more equipment, and we would need to move outside of the city, and that's not something we're interested in doing. We're interested in being a 4 to 8 man business, providing college kids jobs and local people jobs as managers, and having 2 to 3 1-ton trucks with small trailers, nothing any different than the residents themselves, literally across the street, are already using and driving daily. Our traffic would be in and out of maybe 2 times a day, so you're talking 8 vehicles on that road frontage. That road frontage is actually rated quite high. One of the things my attorneys did was pull some of the statistics off the DOT websites. We are a non-DOT company because we're under 26,500 pounds gross weight, which removes us from any roadway restrictions or any city road use constrictions, which is obviously necessary in order to deliver water. You know, this is what we do. Small bottled water, 3-gallon and 5-gallon bottled water. We're not a frac company. We're not an oil and gas company. We're talking about putting a non-invasive, not loud, low traffic business into an area that had over 450 kids coming and going on a weekly basis, directly adjacent to a school that has 4 times that many people coming in and out, plus had food service trucks and multiple trash trucks a day. We're not even a drop in the bucket compared to what's going on there right now. I kind of find it absurd, and some of the rumors and things I've heard they're malarkey. That's the best word I can use to describe it. I just don't see how a maximum of 8 people is ever going to cause the noise and traffic that's causing the concern. I've also heard comments about insurance. I've contacted 3 different insurance agents inside San Angelo City, as well as a couple of large nationwide brokerages, and visited with them about the difference between an empty warehouse and a warehouse with us, a commercial retail sales business that's not doing on-site sales. And they've all assured me that insurance rates will not go up, they'll come down. Statistics and research also show that home values will go up when that building's full versus empty. The reason that there's been some theft and damage done to those empty buildings is, quite frankly, because they're empty. The key is to get somebody in there that's not going to overuse but use. And that's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is good for the city of San Angelo. I'm a good guy. I've got a 100-ton master captain's license. I've served. I've owned 27 businesses. At one point, I held the largest private land lease in the United States. You guys have a copy of that. You don't get that if you're a bad guy and you have bad intentions. All I'm asking for is to put a business here that's needed. You've got a few people that went around, started I'm going to bite my tongue. You had somebody knock on doors and say things that were false, and that got these statistics that are up here, which are also false. And it's not impressive, and it's concerning that that was even accepted, quite frankly. You guys are here to do a job, and we appreciate it, but to just accept something written on a piece of paper with signatures, I think is kind of crazy. I'm not calling you crazy. I'm just looking at it for what it is from the other side of the table. You know, put yourself in my shoes. That's what I'm asking. Are there other questions related to the business or business plan?
Billy?
Yes. Do you have a similar business in another city, and is it located in a residential, primarily residential area?
I'll answer the question, but first, I don't see where that's relevant. The Culligan man's here, and he's in a residential area. Second, yes, I do have another business that was similar that's currently closed. It was on private property, but it had neighbors living literally within 50 feet of it. I have statements from them, and when my attorneys join me on the next one, they'll be glad to present you with those statements and videos and other stuff. But you've already been provided with that information a little over 3 months ago.
We were?
There was a video sent and some writing sent about right at 90 days ago. Jack Gabriel entered it into whatever he entered it into with the when this whole deal was first heard.
Okay.
It was emailed to somebody. I know because I was attached and saw that everybody got it. There was like 30-something people attached to that email.
Okay, we'll find out. Will we be able to?
And we can re-provide that. That's not a problem.
Because I'd like to, review that if necessary. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Did you by chance look for other locations?
Yes, sir. I've been looking for locations since late last year. There's a couple of complications with other locations. Once you get outside the city limits, getting city water and city...
No, I'm not talking about outside the city limits. I'm talking about within the... Did you have a commercial real estate person helping you?
Yes, sir. If you'll let me finish my question, I'll answer it. I looked for other buildings. I had a professional real estate to actually look for commercial buildings, both inside and outside the city. The problem is the majority of the larger buildings are outside the city limits and don't have city water or city sewage. The benefit of our business to the city water is our reject water goes back into the sewage, which adds water into the system, which is good for processing the solids. And we need to purchase that water from the city. It simplifies our process. It's business for the city's water system as well as helping them regenerate their solid waste. So, yes, we've been looking. We have not been able to locate one. There are 2 buildings being built that do meet our requirements, but they're 60 to 90 days out at least and significantly more money.
I have a question for John, too.
Please go ahead, Tommy.
John, I guess my biggest concern from the outset on this has been, my question, John, is on we've got 7 different items that the department uses, compatible with plans and policies, consistent with zoning ordinance, et cetera. What is the purpose of those 7 items in just the process?
Well, in short, the zoning ordinance establishes those criteria primarily just to give us and you all basically the things to think about as you're considering a rezoning. Kind of the default position is the zoning that's there is appropriate. To rezone it to something else, you need to think about whether or not that rezoning makes sense. And so those are the criteria that we review and we recommend. In a case like this where staff has recommended that perhaps this particular use does not meet those criteria, we would suggest that you all would need to find that that you think it does meet those criteria in order to warrant this particular use at this location. But that's the basic answer, is that those are the criteria we review to see if it makes sense, a particular rezoning request.
And I guess that's been my biggest problem from the beginning, is only 6. There is only one of those 7 criteria that has I would say meets the criteria for this particular request. And I'm not sure how we would find otherwise as a council. That's my concern.
I would recommend more strongly than John, it wouldn't just be a suggestion, but a recommendation that if you are anybody's going to make a motion to approve this item, that you do need to address those 7 things and showing that they are compatible with the zoning ordinance to avoid future issues.
I think my big, I support business and business development in the city of San Angelo, and I'm a big supporter of business. But I believe that most people today might look for, or that generally speaking, most people look for a home and they look at a school district and say, I want to be in that area because the school district is there. I want my kids to be able to walk to school. I like being in a neighborhood with a school. And so there's a different mentality as it relates to someone wanting to live in a neighborhood where there is a school versus somebody who might look for a home and say, well, I want it to be where there's a commercial business. I'm very protective of neighborhoods. And I believe that we as a city must have respect for those individuals in a neighborhood because their home is their largest asset in most cases, and they buy it for a certain reason. I believe when we start allowing commercial development within a neighborhood, then we start to deteriorate what we traditionally call neighborhoods. And so I don't think people go out and look for a home in a neighborhood with a commercial business. On the other hand, I'm very supportive of someone wanting to open up a business and wanting to be successful in a business, and I think your idea of the business is a great idea. I would just ask that that business look for alternative locations.
I think we can all say that none of us up here are opposed to opening businesses. I think we're one of the most pro-business councils that we've had, and at least speaking for myself, I think I can speak for everybody else on that issue. Rumors aside, I think we can look past what we've heard and look at the actual issue of what is going in at this location, not, oh, they're just going to be doing this and it's going to degrade our neighborhood. Looking past that, with it being in a neighborhood and putting this to a zoning of planned development, it kind of opens up that can of worms that the mayor was just talking about. The location, the commercial business going in there. We've had already, there's been assorted things in there at that time, in that building that we're talking about. But we've got to look at what this item is bringing. I get calls from the neighbors in that area, and they voice their concerns on trucks coming in and out, even if it's not heavy equipment, the decibel levels. It's just the type of business that's going into that, non-related to what that function of that building was first created for. So I think I've said my piece on that.
Am I allowed to comment?
Yes, sir, you are.
Is a school not a commercial business in the city? Because it is on your website. Is the business and the location not already zoned commercial? Because that's what we meet, it's commercial. The road was built for high traffic. The intersections were built for high traffic, and you wouldn't be getting phone calls had there not been malicious slander done prior to me ever arriving here. I could have put my business there and y'all would have never known. The neighbors would have never known. I'd have been that friendly guy over there doing who knows what in that building. Quite frankly, I guarantee you that. I know, because where I was operating before, I had a neighbor 50 foot away that didn't have a clue what we did in there until they came over one day out of curiosity. So I find some of your concerns, while legitimate, misfound, to say the least. I think there's a huge misconception and misunderstanding in what we do and what we're really going to be doing, and I find it appalling that it's okay for in excess of 30,000 vehicles a week to drive in front of that, and you're worried about 30 vehicles a week, and that's what the DOT has that road classified as used for. It's right on their website. I paid some very knowledgeable people in the legal world to do the research for me, and they assured me that we're well within all the recommendations of the way that was originally structured and founded, that we just need a rezoning for the specific type of use. We're not changing commercial to, or residential to commercial. It's already commercial. And it's actually zoned for a retirement center, which is going to involve sirens, buses, large people transporters, more garbage trucks, and food delivery. American Wholesale Foods is the large food delivery company here, and their truck weighs 52,000 pounds gross max vehicle weight rating. That's way more than that road's designed to haul, and they're using that road right now with that same truck to go to the school right next door. But yet, I'm the concern. That is a concern for me, I assure you. I would hope that you can see past some of the confusion and understand that as well.
Thank you.
I believe with the statement that Teresa just made, that we need to case an argument for that 7 criteria. I'm not comfortable enough for making a motion to approve that and argue those 7 points.
Respectable enough. I understand that. I just wanted to bring my case in point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Morning.
Good morning.
How y'all today?
We're good today.
Once again, my name is Mike Wise. I serve the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese here in San Angelo, and I've been listening to this, and I think the council is on the right track here. So I don't know that I really need to, reiterate too much of what I talked about the last time. But you do bring up the 7 points that have to be considered here. And if I might add just some emphasis here, this planning staff has recommended 4 times that this proposal be denied. And in the today's report to the mayor and the city council, they recommend once again that it be denied. And so I think it's very, very wise of you to take their considerations as seriously as you have. I was also somewhat concerned that, if you remember last time, I told you that the map did not show the property that we owned. I have a little trouble with this because we bought that property in October of 2020, and yet this petition was filed in December of 2020, at least 6 or 7 weeks after we bought the property. Mr. Gabriel should have been well aware of this. I understand he's a realtor. To me, that would indicate, at best, a gross oversight or incompetency, and I would hate to think that it might even represent perhaps some sort of attempt to pull a fast one here before anybody realized what's going on. And so I think that you've been very wise in the way you have looked at this thing. And I might add, too, that this area has already been rezoned twice. I don't think it's fair to the residents and the school and the church to do it a third time. I really don't. And I realize, that y'all are elected by the people, but that does not mean that you necessarily have to do what the people say you want to do, because we have a representative form of government. And as such, it's your responsibility to sometimes act for what you feel is best for the city, best for the residents, regardless of what popular opinion might be. But in this particular case, I think you're leaning very much in favor of what the people are wanting here, primarily because you think it's what's best for them. So I'd just like to thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Further public comment?
Good Good morning, Council. I'm Jack Gabriel, owner of the property at 2909 A&M. And just in response to Mr. Weiss, when I sold that 2.5 acres to them, they were responsible and they asked to do the surveying on it. So that was recorded. SKG did the survey. I was asked by Ms. Bucher the other day. She was saying that they couldn't find that survey. I called SKG, produced the survey, and emailed it to her. So I'm not sure what the issue is with or why it wasn't recorded or why it wasn't found. But, you know, all that was done legitimately by SKG. So that is all on record. And I believe y'all have that as well now. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Brenda?
Yes, Tom.
We've got something that's gone through planning, and they have suggested in favor of the establishment of the business. All right. They reviewed criteria, which I will say I am not versed well in the 7 or 6 criteria we have, which has come to us and staff has gone to deny that. So I think there's some different play on what's being presented here. But I think it's key we know, and also Mr. Murphy and Mr. Gabriel are aware of what those 7 criteria are for us, or 6 criteria for us to approve. I don't know how risky it is to move forward with it at this point. You know, now, in the case of Mr. Murphy, if we do that, what's that put on it? Another 30, 45 days before they can get it back to us again? How long would it take for us to get that criteria addressed and bring it back to council?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by getting the criteria addressed. You mean send it back to Planning Commission, or?
It means each of those 6 items, if it was to be discussed, to validate that those items are not challengeable. In other words, 6 out of the 7 items have been said to be items that we would need to address and believe that, in fact, they met the criteria, correct?
Right. The items deal with the compatibility with our current plans and with our zoning ordinance and how consistent it is. And it's easy to make an argument that, you know, this is commercial versus not commercial, but really our zoning ordinance is more staged than that. So when we discussed it with staff, it's not like they're putting in a school, which is easily something that you put in residential areas. They're in residential areas around the world. This is more like a light manufacturing is where we kind of thought it would fall in our normal zoning ordinance. So we have to somehow state that light manufacturing is compatible with our zoning ordinance in a residential district. And that's where the struggle comes. So the items are compatible with plans and policies. It's compatible with the comprehensive plan and any other land use policies adopted by the Planning Commission, consistent with the zoning ordinance. So whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment would conflict with any portion of the zoning ordinance, whether compatible with surrounding area, whether and to the extent which the proposed amendment is compatible with the existing and proposed uses surrounding the subject land and is appropriate to zoning districts for the land. Change conditions, whether and the extent to which there are changed conditions that require an amendment. Effect on the natural environment, which I think is the one that staff said there's not going to be any effect on the natural environment because the building's already in use. Community need, whether the need and extent to which proposed amendment addresses the demonstrated community need. And then the development patterns, whether it's consistent with the patterns of development within the community. All of those criteria, you know, also come through litigation other cities had on zoning types of issues. There's no point in having a zoning ordinance if you're not going to make decisions consistent with it. So that's why I'm saying if we're going to move forward with approving this, there's going to have to be some way to say that this project is consistent with our current zoning practices in that location and our overall comprehensive plan for development.
What's the next step? And we'll punt that to John.
I mean, I guess it depends on your inclination. If, I mean, obviously you could make a decision today. If you're concerned about approving it without addressing those issues, I mean, I guess there would need to be some discussion today for direction to staff on, you know, I don't think we have to go down each and every one, but to a large extent, we would need to bring that back to you, but we would need to know why you think it's compatible with a neighborhood adjacent to it. Then we could go back and look at each of the criteria and come up with some findings. And looking back, while the Planning Commission didn't specifically go through the findings, they had some discussions about why they do think this is okay and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. But I guess that's what I would ask, if you are interested in approving, some general discussion on why you think this is compatible, and then we could bring it back to you with answering some of these 7 criteria. But to do that, we would need your direction on basically why you disagree with the staff's recommendation that it's not appropriate for the neighborhood.
At this point, go ahead,
Harry.
Thank you. Most of you know that I'm very pro-business. District 3 encompasses the downtown area, and I really believe that we need business in this community. We need to expand that tax base. Having said that, I can't help what prior councils did. The last amendment to this thing was done in 2013. That was way beyond my time with this particular council, way beyond everybody's time on this council. So from my perspective, operating a commercial business in the middle of a neighborhood is not something that I want to do. Got plenty of land in this community, plenty of area in this community that need businesses, and I would suggest that that's where we look to put them where businesses need to go, and not neighborhoods.
Lucy?
I want to go ahead and agree with what Harry just said. I also believe that, like the mayor mentioned, our homes are our biggest assets, and that's the one thing that we want to protect our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and so that I believe that there is somewhere in the city that this business can go in besides in that neighborhood.
Thank you, Lucy. Any further comment?
I do have a comment, and because I'm dealing with this right now in District 6, business going into primarily a residential area, and it's one thing when it starts out and it works okay, but then after a while it expands beyond what it was originally described as, and it makes it really, really difficult to justify to residents, well, this is what you said, this is what that company said they were going to do, and now they're not doing that. So what are you going to do about it? So once we have already approved something, then it's very difficult to contain it and to ensure that it starts out the way that it does. And as has been stated, I am very pro-business, but I'm also concerned about property rights for individuals and their primary residents. So I would have to say at this point in time, I just cannot vote for this business going into that residential neighborhood.
Thank you. Further comment? Do I have a motion?
And I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion for denial.
There's a motion for denial. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Tommy. Do we have public comment? No public comment. We will take a vote. All in favor of denying, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Motion for denial. We will move on to item B, update on the preliminary design phase for the Lake Nasworthy Area Wastewater Collection System Improvements Project. Presentation will be made by Assistant Water Utilities Director Andy Basilio and Alan Wilkie of CDM Smith.
Morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. Andy Basilio, Assistant Director of Water Utilities. With us this morning is Mr. Alan Wilkie and Mr. Alan Rames from CDM Smith. They are consultants for CDM Smith, and they are presenting to you an update on the Lake Nasworthy area sewer system improvements. As you know, this project is to expand capacity out at the airport in the lake area. And so our goal today is both to give you an update, but also to get your concurrence on the preliminary alignment, and then also to get your approval for us to move forward with this project. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Wilkie.
Sometimes my glasses get fogged up and I can't see. So.
Well, and it's harder to hear.
Yeah.
And
thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us this opportunity to give you an update on this project. A while back, we presented a master plan on how to deal with the wastewater issues that are currently out at Lake Nasworthy that are restraining the growth in that area and are potentially an environmental issue as we talk about Earth Day on that lake. So my role today is to kind of give us the historical perspective of what we studied there and where we ended that study at and when we took the preliminary design phase. Mr. Rames will be here to talk about some of the obstacles we faced in getting it from that conceptual design to where we are now with the preliminary design and some of the enhancements we've made in the project while addressing these obstacles. So again, the Lake Nasworthy Wastewater Master Plan was completed. It looked at encompassing the airport master plan and providing wastewater service for that expanded area around the airport. We also looked at removing the bottleneck. There's more than several, over 20 lift stations that are around Lake Nasworthy, and particularly what I would call the southwest corner of the lake where the airport is. A lot of lift stations there are all pumped together into a single force main that runs across the bottom of the lake, which we believe, which is a bottleneck. It causes a restriction in the flow from that area, but it also is a potential environmental hazard. And so we then created in the master plan an initial project layout. So little green dot is what I need to follow. So this is just a little background on Lake Nasworthy. You can see all the green dots are different lift stations that are serving the area around there. The force main that is the restriction runs right through here, and it's an 8-inch line that lays on the bottom of the lake. You know where the airport is. Our goal was to provide service, enhance service to the airport area and around Lake Nasworthy, remove as many lift stations as possible, and open up that area for future economic development. I presented this graph at the last, Andy, how did you make the little red line go away? Oh, it went away. Okay, time. So this is a diagram of how the lift stations out there work, and it's a very confusing thing. I don't want to spend much time on it other than to say it's confusing and it's very complex, and the goal of the project is to remove some of that complexity and make it a simpler operation. So at the end of the wastewater master plan, we had presented to council an approach to serve that area. The approach was to start with a gravity sewer at just north of South Chadburn and run generally up the Concho River, crossing under 306 and under 87 to get to the old railroad right-of-way, and then put 2 gravity lines to serve the Bentwood area, and then a force main that would serve the Lake Nasworthy area. That's where we left off. The council went and got funding for the project. We signed a preliminary design contract with the city and have been working diligently to get a project that'll meet this goal. Mr. Rames has been the senior project engineer on that project, and I'll have him make a short presentation on the obstacles that we have had to deal with and how we've overcome those.
Good morning. My name is Alan Rames, also a CDM Smith. I'm working with Mr. Wilkie on the project. Alan mentioned the preliminary alignment. So the first step in addressing an exact alignment was to check the viability of the preliminary alignment. The project essentially commences at South Chadburn, which is about right there. There's a manhole that we're hooking into. The line would run up along the river, eventually crossing Lake Nasworthy, and would relieve, as Alan mentioned, a lot of the lift stations at Lake Nasworthy. So you see on this screen, all of the fuchsia or pink shaded areas are land that the city owns. So our goal, in order to minimize the complexity of the project and to minimize the cost would be to use city-owned land as much as possible to avoid having to purchase easements. Okay, one time. So this slide shows essentially the entire alignment. The intent of this slide is to show you the original service area that the project was intended to serve and some other areas we looked at serving along the way. So the peninsula area out here on the lake, just north and east of the airport, was the essential of the initial project area that was to be relieved, as Alan mentioned, to take the force main off of the bottom of the lake, which is currently basically exposed and a potential long-term hazard. We worked with staff on looking at the alignment as we went to potentially serve other areas in the city by gravity. So the areas you see highlighted in pink are areas that once the system is built, the way we've looked at it, in the future, the line could be extended to pick up all of these pink areas. So in addition to the area around the airport and south and west of the lake, everything shown here in pink, ultimately you could extend the system out. So it would provide a potential service to a large portion of the city between the airport and South Chadbourn. We encountered 3 or 4 significant hurdles in laying out the alignment. The longest or biggest significant hurdle, again starting at South Chadbourn at the top of the screen here, is the connection point for the line. What we found is the existing manhole that we're connecting to is relatively shallow. There's an existing 36-inch that connects, comes under Chadbourn, and then turns and goes under the river. Our initial intent was to parallel that 36. However, we found when we laid it out, a couple of thousand feet of the new line would actually be above grade. It would need to be covered with dirt. The line that's there today just crosses Chadbourn and then goes across the lake, and it actually was done that way. There's literally a mound of dirt out there to keep the pipe in the ground. That was a good approach for that line. However, we're going a significantly farther distance, and building a mound over the top of the pipe had a lot of hurdles, not the smallest of which is it would completely block flow of the river. Effectively would be a thousands of foot long berm. So what we looked at doing on the lower end was moving essentially to the east uphill until we found an alignment where we could keep the pipe in the ground, but not an alignment where the pipe got too deep. So you can see Jackrabbit is at that location there. So we started to look at alignments that would allow us to get through there. By the time we got to Jackrabbit, the pipe would have been over 20 feet deep, which it becomes economically unviable for long stretches of distance. So we settled on an alignment that actually runs through the old fish hatchery property and then a private property to the south. That allowed us to get the line through without being too deep or without having to cover it up with dirt. Other issues we've got that we'll have to deal with are river crossings, and we have potentially river crossings at 306, just south of the country club, and at the river at the old railroad embankment. And then we have also the crossing at Lake Nasworthy, which Alan mentioned would be a long horizontal directional drill. So we tried to pick locations where there was adequate room to get a crossing in. Another item, we have several areas or 2 areas where we'll cross TxDOT right away or have to deal with TxDOT. We would like to, if possible, minimize the amount of permits we've got or approvals we need to get from other properties. So the alignment was slightly modified with the thought of TxDOT in mind. And then finally, the last alignment would be a force main that runs under the lake. It will be about 3,000 feet long. Today, there's a single line that serves the entire area. If that line broke, you would have no service to the area at all. So the intent there is to horizontally directional drill under the lake, to put in a casing that's large enough to hold 2 pipes, and then run 2 force mains through there, one of which would be serviced today, and you'd have a redundant backup, and it would also provide a secondary force main for future growth if you got there.
And at what point would that be? You're talking about running 2 lines. Can you show me that on the...
Yes, ma'am, and there's a detail a little later, but
okay.
it would be right in this location there. And so essentially, we've got to get the wastewater from the airport area under the lake, down the river to a manhole in this location here.
I think the biggest challenge that we've all talked about over the past couple years is the idea that you're going to have sewer in a pipe underneath Lake Nasworthy or on the bed, and what happens if that line breaks. And so here we are with a plan that still has pipes going under or in the river, in the lake, and potential catastrophic problem.
The way, Mayor, that's a good point. The way that's being addressed, as Alan mentioned, and may have been overlooked, it's going to be encased in another pipe. So right now, the force main is laying on the bottom of the lake.
Please speak into the mic. Thank you.
Right now, the force main is laying on the bottom of the lake. If something happened to it, it would just open up. The goal here was to build a big enough pipe that would be an encasement pipe that would enclose the two force mains that Mr. Rames mentioned inside the encasement pipe. If one of those pipes inside the casing pipe broke, it would not go into the lake. It would go into the casing pipe and have a secondary containment.
That's important. I mean, we really need to make sure we understand that, because that's huge in terms of.
I should have mentioned it earlier. That was part of the master plan too, and getting in front of a city council always makes you a little nervous as an engineer. But anyway, the other thing that this plan, that Mr. Rames mentioned, is horizontally directional drilled. So the encasing pipe will be about 25 or 30 feet below the bottom of the lake. So not only is it encased in a secondary pipe, it's also 25 or 30 feet of dirt or silt between the pipe and the actual water in the lake. So it's a much more environmentally sensitive approach to how to get wastewater from the airport side to the riverside. Sorry.
Thank you for that.
So this is a blow up of the existing wastewater system north and east of the airport. And what we would look at doing, Alan had mentioned there's a conflagration of pumped flow that comes and crosses Knickerbocker, basically crosses the lake at Knickerbocker. There's flow that's pumped up from the southwest from the airport. There are two existing lift stations, one the Lake Nasworthy Estates lift station, which is here, and the South Concho lift station, which is there. And all of that flow essentially is pumped up and crosses the lake today. So the idea would be to install a lift station at the location where you see the star. We would build a red relief line, which you see swinging around to the Lake Nasworthy Estates lift station. That would be a new line, and we would take that flow and gravity it to the new lift station. There's a short existing 8-inch line at this location, and so we would essentially relay that line, and it would come the other direction. And so all of the flow from both of those lift stations and pump flow coming up from the southeast would dump into a single consolidated lift station. The other item would be where the conflagration in this location of force mains coming together and then individual grinder pumps that are on the lake, where they all come together. We would extend a gravity line from the end of Lake Nasworthy Estates up, and all of that pump flow would dump into that station and would gravity down to the proposed lift station. So it essentially provides a centralized place where, instead of having, Alan showed the exhibit earlier where there's a proliferation of pumps out there, you would have one single city-operated new lift station that would provide stuff. This is a preliminary, basically a preliminary schematic design of the lift station location. This is on South Concho, about 500 feet south of the existing South Concho lift station, and on the other side of the road. Flow would essentially come in. I mentioned a line would come over from the Nasworthy Estates lift station, and a line would come in from the South Concho lift station and would dump into a wet well there. The wet well would be set up with duplex pumps, one operating at a time, so you'd have full redundancy with a backup pump. We would leave room for a third pump. It wouldn't be installed today, but if you've got a lot of growth in the future, it would be a relatively easy to expand the lift station.
How does one more, what additional capacity does one more provide?
Well, essentially in your case, normally when we add a second pump to a single main, the velocity goes up and we have a lot more friction losses. However, in your case, since you would have two mains, if you wanted to operate both of those mains, you would double the capacity. So by putting in the redundant main, it not only gives you some protection from losing service on a single point of failure. It also gives the ability in the future to add a pump to the lift station and essentially have almost two independent systems pumping from the same location.
Right.
If that makes sense. So the lines I mentioned would combine, come out of the lift station, and we would horizontally directional drill in this location. We go under the lake and come back out. We pull a casing through the line. We've done quite a few of these lately under several rivers in South and Central Texas. We would pull probably a 24, 30-inch casing under and then fuse the pipes, the two independent force mains, and pull them through. One would be connected. The second would be manifolded and valved off so that in an emergency, say you had a failure at one, you could turn some valves and use the other one. And then, as I mentioned, in the future, you could drop a third pump, connect it separately, and have the ability for growth in the future in the area. Finally, our preliminary opinion of construction cost, the preliminary alignment, which essentially encompasses all of the pipes that we've talked about. It would, including escalation for future construction cost, looking a couple of years in the future, is about $23 million. The Loop 306 river crossing and the North Bentwood relief line would be a line that would come across at 306. We would stub it across to provide potential service to the land west of the river and north of 306, and then bring that line under 306 to provide basically a terminal manhole for the Butler Farms area and all of the undeveloped land between Bentwood and the Butler Farms area. So by hook or crook, the line would provide a way to serve all of that area. Ultimately, at some additional cost, that line could be extended up to the North Bentwood lift station as well. The lift station at South Concho Drive, we've estimated at about $2.1 million. Setting it up for 3 pumps, but only purchasing 2 today. And then design, engineering, and other cost would be factored in there. And so the total is about 31.4, which I think is slightly lower than the estimate in the preliminary engineering report.
When, my big question and challenge has been, when do we get started? Because we know that right now we are so handicapped by the current situation and the limitations on capacity. So for us, sounds like a great game plan. Sounds like it's an engineering strategy that is very much what we wanted to accomplish with this project. And so with that said, when do we get started and what's the time frame in terms of delivering the project?
Alan has looked at the schedule.
So, Mayor, one of the things that we have been, alignment has changed slightly from what we presented to the council in the master plan. I believe Allison has come and talked to staff about some of the changes along the way. We are now in a position where we think that is the final alignment that you saw today. We were hoping, and I think, Andy, I think we're looking for direction to say, yes, go proceed. Because the next thing that has to happen is an archaeological survey, because we're building this on public land, and state statute says anything built on state land has to have an archaeological survey. We only want to pay for that once, so we wanted to make sure the alignment at least met the community's needs and we could move forward with it. Secondly is the easement acquisition. Alan mentioned the Parks and Wildlife, which will be a little bit tricky. There's also a large landowner south of the Parks and Wildlife Department we'll have to get an easement from, and there's a few others getting from the end of the city-owned property to the old railroad right-of-way, and then from the old railroad right-of-way to the South Bentwood lift station. I don't know, there's maybe a half a dozen, maybe 8 easements. And so that acquisition always is a wild card to how long it takes. Andy asked me to put together a schedule taking all these things into account, and if easement acquisition, archaeological doesn't become an issue, then I think late summer of 23, fall of 23, we could have an operating line.
So you're telling me that even after we say go forward today, or we like the plan, you're still 2 years away from anything beginning?
To be complete.
To be completed, not started?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, not started, complete.
Okay.
And we're
Just to make
assuming about
sure.
a year to 14 months for construction. So assuming, I think in the schedule I had 5 or 6 months to acquire the easements, and then a little bit of time the archaeologist has to do a little time. So, archaeology, make sure the alignment that we showed you today doesn't run into a cultural or historical feature that we have to avoid. Once we have cleared that hurdle, then it would start with the easement acquisition. Again, there's the Parks and Wildlife one might be the trickiest one because there's no condemnation of authority across the state. But luckily, they are a political agency, and you have good representation at the state level, so we can perhaps overcome any obstacles that we might find there. But that's probably the biggest wild card, in my opinion. We actually did a preliminary, had our sub-consultant do a preliminary evaluation of identified cultural and historical features along the alignment. There was just 2, and the alignment that we picked has avoided those 2. So unless they uncover something when they're out there looking, we don't expect much. The other thing that it kind of is a benefit from the archaeological standpoint, because we had such a hard time finding a place to put the line in the ground. It was so flat in that area. The line is not exceptionally deep. So when they do the archaeological survey, they only have to look as deep as the pipe goes. So they're not looking really deep in the floodplain of the South Concho River. They're just looking on the surface. So a little side benefit from the particular alignment that was chosen for this project.
Thank you. Do I have other questions from council or comments from anyone?
I think they need to get started this afternoon.
I do too.
Yeah. Alan, you may have, okay, then I'll look at both of them. But you were the one, Alan Wilkie, you're the one that said, gave the time frame. You may not want to let any of us have your cell phone number since you put a time frame on it, because we may be calling you saying, when. So, Mayor, if we need, what kind of action do you need motion-wise?
Just an update, I think, so I don't
Is this
think we
just
need
an
any-
update, Teresa?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would first like to say that these gentlemen and their team have done an incredible job working with us. We've looked at multiple alignments and asked them to tweak multiple times to make sure we have the right solution. But to answer your question, sir, the motion or the action needed today would be approval for us based on this preliminary alignment to move forward.
Thank you very much. And as we've all said, and Tommy just reiterated, get started.
Do we need that as a motion? No.
I'll actually make a motion since it is just an update item.
Okay.
Thank
Keep going, guys.
Thank you. Yes, Tom?
I have one question.
Wait a second. Tom wanted something.
So if we're looking at putting that pipe underneath the lake, and I get it, the one big pipe, you're going to put the 200 and manifold them and run them through that. I mean, we're looking at growth out there of who knows what that will be, Brenda. And
That's why I was asking about
I
capacity.
was wondering, is that big enough? I mean, just for that one section, the major roadblock is the lake. We can work beside stuff elsewhere. So is it worth the chance now to think 50 years in the future or 60 of it'd be great if we had 1 pipe or 2 pipe with 4 pipes under the lake?
That's a decision that the council can obviously direct us. It's not our pipe, it's not our money, it's the city of San Angelo's pipe and money. We've used the planning processes of the airport master plan, also working with city staff during the master planning process. We're told here's where we think economic development may occur. Obviously, that's a fluid situation, and things are changing all the time.
What percent of growth did you calculate? I think that's the question. So if you say we're at Y today, what's Z, and what does Z represent compared to today's capacity? In other words, does this double the capacity? And that's why I was asking about that third pump. So
I don't know the exact number, Mayor. I can get back with Andy on that. I know that it's significantly more than what there is out there right now.
significance, not a number.
I know. I'm going to get the number to Andy because I don't know the number off the top. I don't want to go on the record with an inaccurate number.
Are you up for election this month too?
I'm just I wasn't prepared for that question. I would have had the right answer, but
Well, capacity is our biggest challenge, and that's what we keep saying, capacity. So
I know there's a lot. I know that's
Well, that's not a number either.
I know, Mayor, and that's why I'm going to get the number to Andy. But I know we plan for a much larger flow, and I know it's still not a number. But
one of the numbers that we talked about was 500 from 500,000 gallons to 2.5 million gallons of sewage. So you're looking at almost 5 times those. So that's the initial
so that's
discussion
with
we're
this
having.
plan.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that number.
Thank you, City Manager.
Mayor, let me
Yes.
piggyback off of what Tom brought up there. I would say, Andy, to Alan's, this council, in my opinion, has been very diligent at trying to do what is best long term. So, Andy, I would say to you, as our person, if you need to maybe look at a larger, as Tom was talking, for not 30 years in the future, but maybe 50 or 60 years in the future, at least give us the option in terms of what that additional cost would be so that we could make that determination. You may not
Right
have
now,
it
we're looking
now.
at 5 times our current capacity. And so the issue is, if it's 5 times current capacity, what growth rate is that on an annual compounded number? So, because 5 times from today versus compounded, what does a compounded number look like relative to 5 times, or is that 3 times?
So I will get that information from Mr. Wilkie and
Good.
Mr. Rames.
Okay.
And then I will certainly share it with Allison and Mr. Valenzuela, and we can relook at that and see if we want to consider additional capacity.
And it may not be worth the cost at all.
That's the other issue.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
right.
Exactly. That's the balance between how much additional capacity is enough versus how much is too much with regard to the
Still have to live with
additional
revenue
construction
issues, budget issues, finance issues. So,
And I do want to point out this new configuration actually comes in at about $600,000 below what we were actually projecting initially, so that's good, so.
Yeah, we're
Maybe you can squeeze it in for 600,000, Andy.
Sorry?
Maybe you can squeeze it in for 600,000.
$599.
all right, thank you very much, guys.
I will tell you, those numbers fluctuate, and costs have been going up lately. Materials have been going up.
Thank you to Allens and Andy.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Item C, consider awarding AP-02-21 Airport Entrance Road to Reese Albert Incorporated in the amount of $1,692,003.18, budgeted for purchase in fiscal year 2021, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Jeremy, you are on.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to go after that last one to see the potential growth out there at the airport, so thank you for your support. Just a little project background. I came to you about a year ago. The FAA had approved us to use the passenger facility charge. That's the $4.50 that's assessed to every ticket that's purchased through a commercial flight. They approved us in 2016 to spend $1 million on the entrance road and $1 million on the parking lot. When we did the cost estimates for the entrance road alone, it was about $2 million. So we requested an amendment that ran through the FAA, and the direction that we got from the airport board and city council was to amend the PFC application for $2 million for a standalone entrance road project to include the entrance road rehab, roadway lighting upgrade, signage upgrade, and then a new monument and some landscaping there at the entrance road. The total estimate at the time was about $2 million, a little over $2 million, which included design. Just some pictures of the entrance road. Old infrastructure that was paid for under an FAA grant at one point. There's the monument as you come in with very bare landscaping out there. Here's a scope of the project. It's really going all the way from Knickerbocker into the terminal. Anything that a passenger would access is eligible for PFC dollars. And so we've really designed the scope around what is eligible for the PFCs. Lighting and signage along the way, we've learned that if you just stick one pole up there with a sign, it turns into a windmill. It doesn't actually stay. So we're going to have monument signs where the Texas wind doesn't affect them. There's a picture of the monument sign, and that just matches the monument sign that we already have out there as you enter the terminal. The picture on the right is one of the light poles. It's an LED light pole. And then on the bottom, that's the entrance monument sign that we want to put in there. We had to pull this part out of the entrance landscape monument sign. We had to pull this out of this project because it was way overbid. So we're going to bid that out as a standalone project, not include it with this one. The bid results, we submitted bids back in January. We had the deep freeze and a couple of the addendums, so we didn't actually open bids until the 1st of March. We had 2 bidders. Reese Albert was our low bidder at $1,692,003.18. And then we had Mark III out of San Antonio that also put in a bid. As I stated before, the landscape portion has been pulled out, so this does not include that landscape and monument sign. Here's the financials. We already budgeted through the street bond $1.5 million that can be spent and is ready for use. The next item on your agenda is the second reading for the PFC increase in the fund balance. We need to increase that $234,000, which gives us a total available funding of a little over 1.7. All of that 1.7 is reimbursable through the PFC program. And as I stated a year ago, we can reimburse that about $150,000 a year. As we recover from coronavirus and as we are getting our second air carrier with United tomorrow, that service starts tomorrow, hopefully we can increase that payback to the city a lot faster. And as you know, we cannot reimburse any expenses from landscaping. All the design costs have already been budgeted. That's already been taken care of. So what I'm asking for today is just a recommendation of awarding APO 221 Airport Entrance Road rehabilitation to Reese Albert in the amount of $1,692,3.18. Any questions?
Do I have any questions for Jeremy? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve is presented.
Billy made a motion to approve, second by Lucy. Public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Item D, second reading of an ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021 for capital items, grants, and programs. And Tina, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. Tina Jersky, Director of Finance. This, as you said, is a budget amendment on second reading. You know that normally this would be on the consent agenda, but we did put it on regular one so that you could approve the previous agenda item for the bid at the airport, and two, because we did have one change to one of the other items. So I'll just go through these quickly. Intergovernmental Fund, this is just budgeting for additional WIC revenue from the grant. Property casualty, this is no changes to this. It's insurance proceeds from TML for damages to vehicles and buildings. This one has changed slightly, about $10,000 more, just tweaking that as we had more information available from TML on reimbursements for damage to police vehicles. Winter storm repairs, that's the $1 million that you authorize out of sales tax surplus for the street damages. And the airport entrance road, of course, as Jeremy just mentioned, we're budgeting that from the PFC fund balance. These last two are additional funds at the airport from grants, $1 million from the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, and another $14,000 from the Concessions Relief Addendum.
Questions for Tina? With none, may I have a motion? Moved by Lane.
Second.
Second by Tommy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to item E. Item E is a first reading and public hearing of ordinances. 1, amending the City of San Angelo's comprehensive plan, changing certain lands from commercial to neighborhood, being 18.808 acres, and 2, rezoning property from heavy commercial to general commercial, being 13.321 acres, from general commercial to single-family residence, being 7.999 acres, and from heavy commercial to single-family residence, being 5.81 acres, generally located southwest of the Arden Road and Northwest Drive intersection. John, you're on.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This in red, you can see the area. Arden Road is along the north side of this property, and this is northwest. There's the existing apartment complex there kind of in the middle, and this is really just shifting some boundaries. There's largely commercial development that's planned and zoned for that northern piece, and then residential in this section. And basically what they're doing is shrinking the size of the commercial to expand the neighborhood area. And so basically they're looking at these two pieces right now that are commercial and taking those to residential, and then again shrinking that heavy commercial, as well as at the same time rezoning it from heavy commercial to general commercial. All the things they want to do fit in general commercial, and that's more appropriate for the type of development that's happening in that area. We did send out our notices, did not receive any responses in favor or in opposition. The change in intensity, as I mentioned, from heavy commercial to general commercial really makes sense for that area, especially since they're now going to be building single-family homes right up to the back of it. Staff does recommend approval of both the comprehensive plan change and the rezoning, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval by a 6-0 vote. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for John? If none, then may I will you make a motion, please?
Yes, I drive by this property every day, so I would make a motion that we approve as presented.
By Billy, a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by by Harry. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to item F. First reading and public hearing of an ordinance to approve the abandonment of a 20-foot by 500-foot, 0.229 acres alley right-of-way located north of East Twig Avenue, east of Oak Street, south of East Beauregard Avenue, and west of South Magdalen Street.
Thank you. Most of this entire block is owned by Shannon, although there are a couple of pieces they do not own. But as part of future possible plans for development in that block, they have asked to abandon that alley that cuts through the middle of the block. There are a couple of issues with that, but I'll mention those in a second. This is in the downtown, and it's zoned a combination of the planned development for Shannon as well as some central business district zoning. We did send out our notices to the surrounding properties. We received one response in favor. Just a couple of pictures of that alley. You can see that there are some overhead utility lines. There are also some underground utilities. You'll notice that one of the conditions is to basically address those lines, whether it's getting an easement for the lines to stay where they are or for them to move the lines at some point. This is just the actual plat of that area. Planning staff, as normally, we send this out to not only other departments in the city, but all public and private utilities that might have facilities in the area. So Frontier, AEP, Altice, which is Suddenlink, and Atmos all have facilities, and so one of the conditions is to require either easements for them to remain or rerouting, and of course the property owner would have to pay for that. And of course our normal provision that they would have to replat those properties to incorporate the alley into their properties. We look through some criteria similar to a rezoning. We have criteria we look at for recommending an abandonment of an alley. We see there's really no need for maintaining the alley, especially with the future development plans in place. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission unanimously, with 4 conditions. The replat, as I mentioned, paying our fee for abandonment, filing the quitclaim deed, and then rerouting utilities or an easement. I noted there was an issue with that. There are at least one of the utilities, there are some questions about whether they're going to have to move the utilities or get an easement. But with this condition, you can go ahead and approve it, even though that isn't worked out yet, because one of the conditions is that they work out the arrangement, and we feel confident that they'll figure out some solution to that. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions for John? Harry?
No questions, but just a comment. As long as the applicant is willing to pay for the rerouting of the utilities and has conversation with the 2 adjoining properties, I don't have a problem with this. Matter of fact, I think it's a great deal. So I'm going to make a motion to approve as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Lane. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. None opposed. Motion passes 7-0. We will now move into the closed session, the executive session under provision of Government Code Title 5, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding Block 18, San Angelo Edition. And with that, we will move into executive session. we will call this meeting back to order. It is 10:47 a.m. on Tuesday, April the 20th. So the follow-up on consider items discussed in closed session. Harry, would you like to make an announcement?
I make a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute all documents necessary to purchase the Standard Times building located at 14 West Harris Street, 18 West Harris Street, and 34 West Harris Street, San Angelo, Texas, from the Scripps NP Operating LLC for an amount not to exceed $950,000.
Do I have a second? Second by Lane. Any public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Item B, consideration of approving various board nominations. The Airport Advisory Board, Mark Clark, SMD 3, to an unexpired term ending October 2021. Economic Development Corporation, John Barrio, SMD 5, to a first term ending February 2023. Public Art Commission, Jamie Hinesmith, SMD 1, to a first term. Ann Shahan, SMD 4, to a first full term. Richard Round, the mayor, to a second term, all ending April 2023. Public Housing Authority, Barbara Brown, to a first full term. Wes Masters to a fourth term, both ending April 2023. And then the Zoning Board of Appeals, Bill Feist, SMD 3, to an unexpired term. Candy Pool, SMD 5, to an unexpired term, both ending January 2022. May I have a motion for approval of those?
So move.
A motion and a second. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any? With none, I ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved. A second.
Okay.
Second, public comment. With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
It's like
Meeting is
Hebert's.
adjourned.
That's Hebert's